There is a tale in the town of Hosdell, of a shrine hidden in the field. Parents whisper into the ears of half-dreaming children, telling of its bright roof and winding vines. They tell of special flowers that grow there, bright as the sun and with nectar that can heal the sick. They speak of the kind shrine keeper, who is willing to help any that come to him, eagerly giving whatever he has. They always finish with the golden artifact the shrine holds. Town healers claim it is an image of Pelor, the healing and sun god. Blacksmiths claim it depicts Moradin, god of the forge. Each family describes the golden idol a bit differently, claiming their god is responsible for the secret shrine's blessings. Regardless of the final details, the result of this tale is always the same. Sons close their eyes and see sandstone pillars. Daughters breathe deep and smell the open field. All give in to the dream of a kind keeper and the promise of good health, picturing any kind of golden image at its center. Some picture a glowing golden orb, others a mighty dwarven smith. But only one child in Hosdell pictures the golden object as it truly is. She sees its sapphire eyes and giggles at its half-open mouth. Only the fisherman's daughter imagines the idol correctly. Only the fisherman knows how the shrine came to be. Long ago, before Hosdell was a bustling trading town, the fields around the town held only flowers. No shrine stood on the plain, no keeper watched nearby. Instead, there was only a small spring, and the fiery orange flowers known to the common folk of Hosdell. It was a lonely thing to be on the open plain at that time. The road was only a footpath, and there was little chance of seeing anyone traveling. Yet travelers never complained of their journey once they reached their destination. They complimented the flowers, saying they made the night seem as day with their brightness. They marveled at the spring, which they claimed made even honey taste bitter. All who traveled the winding path to Hosdell loved the fields. During this time, Obed-Hai, god of the wilds, was exploring his lands when he came across the field leading to Hosdell. He looked upon the bright flowers, and tears rolled down his great cheeks, for he had never seen such overwhelming color. He walked through the field, touching each flower as he passed, until he happened upon the spring. He knelt beside the water and cupped it in his hands. When he brought the water to his lips, he began to weep again. The water was sweeter than even the god of nature had ever tasted. Obed-Hai decided that this field was greater than any he had found before. No flowers were more vibrant, no water as refreshing. He instantly loved the field, and wished to stay forever. He loved the field so much that he began to worry. He grew scared he would never be able to part from it, and he became sorrowful that no place could ever be as wonderful. Obed-Hai decided that the only way to ever be happy again was to forget that this place ever existed to begin with. He reached his hand far to his left and gently picked the nearest flower from the ground. He let his tears fall onto its petals, his memories of the fields held within. When he dropped the flower onto the spring, he vanished from the field. The flower in the spring began to glow as it sank into the water. Its stem began to expand and grow scales. Its petals folded back to become fins. The flower became a goldfish in the blink of an eye, holding within it the nature god's love of the field and favor of the spring. For the next few days, the goldfish swam peacefully in his spring. He thought only of his love of the field. He had never actually seen the field, of course, but he always imagined its beauty. He swam from one side of the spring to the other, back and forth, whispering to himself of his luck that he lived in such a wonderful place. While swimming one day in his spring, a shadow appeared above the goldfish. The goldfish stopped his swimming for a moment and swam to the surface. He peeked his head out of the water. The goldfish looked high above to see a young fisherman looking down at him. The goldfish let out a yelp and ducked back into the water, fearing to be caught. He went into the deepest part of his spring to hide, and there he sat, shivering for fear. "Do not worry, little one," the young fisherman called. "You're far too little to eat." "Go away," the goldfish said back. "I know you are a fisherman. You will take me from my wonderful field and eat me up." "I won't eat you," the fisherman replied. He unwrapped a loaf of bread that he had brought with him and broke off a small piece. "Here, have this," he said as he dropped the bread into the water. The goldfish watched the bread as it sank down into the spring floor beside him. "I will not take this bread," he said to himself, "for I know the fisherman has tied a string to it and will pull me from my spring." The goldfish began to look closely at the bread, but he could not see the string attached. "You do have a beautiful field," the fisherman called down to the goldfish. Maybe the most beautiful I've ever seen. Have you ever been out of your spring long enough to see it?" The goldfish did not reply to the fisherman. He continued to study the water around the bread. Yet the more he looked, the more he struggled to see the fisherman's dastardly plot. "I suppose you can't have." The fisherman was nearly convinced he was talking to himself at this point. "You can't get out of your spring to look, can you?" The fisherman's shadow lifted off the spring as he straightened. A few moments passed before his voice tumbled down to the goldfish again. "I have an idea. Tomorrow I will come back to this spring, and I'll bring with me an empty bucket and fill it with your spring water. Then you can hop into the bucket, and I'll take you on a walk through the field. I think that will do nicely." The goldfish's eyes widened as he heard the fisherman. "No, don't come back," the goldfish called back. "I know you will put me in your bucket and take me home to fry me up." The goldfish waited for a reply for a moment, but none came. Then he waited a few minutes, but still none came. When an hour passed, the goldfish was sure the fisherman had gone and not heard him. Night followed quickly after. "I am doomed," the goldfish whispered to himself. "I am doomed, I am doomed. The fisherman will come tomorrow with his bucket, and when I refuse to get in, he will snare me with a net. I'm doomed." The goldfish began to cry and cry. He thought of the fisherman with his bucket. He thought of his big fire and sharp teeth. "I cannot be eaten," the little fish murmured. "I'm hardly a bite." The goldfish looked up from the bottom of the spring and decided any fate would be better than his. "I will not be eaten," he choked out. I would rather drown." After these final words, the goldfish began to swim. He swam as fast as he could, his fins beating at the water faster and faster. The moon grew in his eyes as he moved. He became a golden flash in the dark water, until he launched himself out of his spring. When the goldfish left the water, the memories of Obed-Hai came to him. The fish marveled at the flowers as he soared. He was amazed by the taste of the spring. He seemed to hang in the air for an eternity. As the fish floated through the night, his scales could not handle the amazement. His fins could not fathom the awe. Slowly, the fish's body began to harden. His eyes became sapphire, and his gaping mouth pure gold. By the time the fish landed, he was a priceless treasure. The next day, the fisherman returned to the spring, bucket in hand, but could not find the goldfish. Instead, nearby, he found a shrine. Sandstone pillars held up a fiery roof, and vines with beautiful flowers clung to the new structure. A golden artifact sat in the center of the shrine, its eyes sapphire and its scales gold. From the spring out walked a creature, seeming half man and half fish. He was dressed in ancient robes. The creature claimed to be the keeper of the shrine. He said he was trusted to keep the field safe. When he asked the fisherman what he required, the fisherman said that what he had come to do had already been done. He simply waved to the keeper and turned back the way he came. After all, he could not show the goldfish what the goldfish had already seen.